Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to Susan G. Komen's virtual MBC Impact Series event. I am Casey Volpe with Susan G. Komen's Community Education and Outreach team. The programming for the series is envisioned as a year-long conversation with attendees, presenting new information and speakers each month. Today, our important conversation will focus on financial taxation, and our featured speaker addressing questions is Dr. Sharon Giordano from MD Anderson Cancer Center. Before we begin, Komen would like to thank our sponsors for supporting the 2022 MBC Impact Series. Thank you to AstraZeneca for being the technology sponsor for this year's event. The virtual setting means that MBC patients, no matter where they live, can be part of this community. We would also like to thank our premier sponsors, Amgen and GE Healthcare. Also, our signature sponsors, Walgreens, Daiichi Sankyo, and Sanofi. This series is made possible because of the generosity of these sponsors. One more housekeeping note. While our speakers are talking, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A or the chat feature in Zoom, and we will get to as many as we can. Towards the end of our programming, a survey link will be placed in the chat. Your feedback is very important to us and helpful for future MBC program planning. Also, by completing the survey, you'll be entered into a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. Now, we are excited you all are joining us for today's discussion. I would like to introduce you to Pam Cole, who will moderate today's programming. Pam was diagnosed with stage 1 ER-positive breast cancer in 2009. In October 2016, she was diagnosed with breast cancer again, and on January 31st, 2017, she was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. A North Carolina native, Ms. Cole has over 40 years of experience working in government and nonprofit management. She served as an executive director of the Susan G. Komen North Carolina Triangle to the Coast affiliate for 8 years. In that role, Pam was a passionate spokesperson and advocate for equitable breast cancer support services in Eastern North Carolina and the vital need for breast cancer research. She helped raise millions of dollars in support of those efforts. Pam just retired from her role with Komen as Development Director of the newly created Metastatic Breast Cancer Collaborative Research Initiative, and we are so grateful to have her here with us today. Pam, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Casey. I'm so pleased and delighted to be here today. It's such an important topic. So many of us who are living with MBC deal with financial anxiety a great deal. So it's a perfect, pertinent topic. So you've heard a little bit about my story in terms of being a ER-positive early stage breast cancer diagnosis. And you know, I did everything I was supposed to do in terms of, I had a lumpectomy, many rounds of radiation, and then 5 years of endocrine therapy. At the end of that endocrine therapy, I was told that I was cancer-free. And I work at Komen, so I knew a few things about a study that was going to be coming out that maybe women should stay on their endocrine therapy longer than 5 years. So I asked that question, but was told, no, I'm good to go. So 3 years later, I had a recurrence, and after a lot of fierce advocating on my part to get a PET scan to just make sure everything was okay, I had the PET scan, which showed some questionable areas. And then on January 31st, I had a biopsy and was clearly stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, ER positive. And that was January 3rd, 5 years ago. So we all know what the statistics are in terms of living to 5 years. So I'm thrilled that I'm still here and only on my second line of therapy. But throughout this whole process has been enormous financial questions and issues. And I'll just give one example. I know we're going to hear a lot more. When I was diagnosed with MBC, I was 65 and had just gone on Medicare. So I had decided to go off of Komen's health insurance because I wanted to save the affiliate money, and I was going to be on Medicare. Unfortunately, 2 months later, I was diagnosed with MBC, and the oral medication that I needed was going to cost me did cost me close to $400 a month for that medication. When I was able to go back on Komen's insurance a year later, that same medication cost me $35 a month. So clearly the system is broken. I know many of you have faced similar or worse situations when it comes to the financial toxicity of this disease. And we are really looking forward to a important conversation, a robust conversation. And we are grateful for Dr. Giordano to present some of the data and give us some information. She is chair of the Department of Health Services Research and a professor of medicine in the Department of Breast Medical Oncology at the University of Texas and the MD Anderson Center. A health services researcher and clinician, Dr. Giordano's research has focused on evaluating how a variety of factors such as social, financial, personal behaviors affect our access to quality of healthcare, and ultimately how this impacts our health outcomes for cancer patients. She has led several comparative studies, effectiveness research studies in breast cancer patients, as well as research to assess the late effects of treatment. She has led a series of studies on male breast cancer, including a Komen-funded international clinical trial to better characterize the clinical features, biology, and outcomes for men diagnosed with breast cancer. Her Komen-funded research aims to understand the real-world toxicities outside of the highly selective patient populations enrolled in most clinical trials, including medication-related toxicities and the financial toxicity associated with systemic therapies for breast cancer. And as we know, those systemic therapies, we are on them for a long time. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, Dr. Giordano, and we're looking forward to hearing your comments.
Well, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to join you today. I'm going to share my slides. Thank you. There, can you see my slides? I think I'll see. So I really appreciate the chance to talk about this topic today because I do think it's so important. One of my most vivid memories sort of early in my career was a patient who I'd taken care of who was a teacher. And she had an early stage triple negative breast cancer, had chemotherapy, and I'd seen her in survivorship. And about 5 years after her initial diagnosis, she developed some back pain. And I had wanted at that time to send her for a bone scan and some further testing. And she shared with me that she really didn't want to do it because of the ongoing cost of her medical care. So she was, 5 years after her initial treatment, and she was still on a payment plan trying to pay off the initial cost of her treatment. And I just was kind of shocked and horrified that I, had played a part, and not that I would have treated her differently, but I had no idea that she had this large financial burden from her treatment. And so that really helped kind of open my eyes to what an important topic this is for our patients. So, we know that, in addition to the stress of a cancer diagnosis and to dealing with advanced breast cancer, financial decisions and treatment side effects add to the stress of the situation. And typically treating physicians, often don't talk about finances. We're not really trained to do that. We're often not comfortable doing that, and really kind of are focused on kind of treatment decisions. Insurance paperwork can be overwhelming and kind of a nightmare. I mean, I'm a physician, and my own insurance bills that I get for minor medical things, I can hardly sort out, like trying to figure out what they're billing for. And really, we know, and I'll show you some data showing that the finances actually do impact patients' decisions about the medical treatments that they choose, including whether or not they want treatment. Sometimes they result in delays in treatment, and sometimes patients unfortunately stop treatment because it's just not affordable. So there was a kind of a provocative editorial back in 2013 that it was one of the first times the term financial toxicity was used. And the author of this really said, brought up the idea that, traditionally in medicine, and still in medicine, we really pick our treatments based on, primarily on effectiveness and secondarily on toxicity, and brought up the issues, should we be considering cost in some of these decisions? Do patients want to know more about costs when they're making decisions? And said, with the whole idea of the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm, does that include financial harm? Are we harming our patients unintentionally by not paying more attention to this issue? So when we talk about financial toxicity, which I'm going to use that term, a lot in the over the next 15, 20 minutes. So we're really talking about three different areas. So one is material conditions. And so this is out-of-pocket expenses, like with what you're actually getting billed for treatment, missed work, reduced income, and, unfortunately, sometimes it goes as far as medical debt and bankruptcy. There's also the psychological response and stress that comes along with that. So, feeling distressed because of the cost of cancer care, concerns about job loss and employment, all related to cancer care and treatment. And then finally, coping behaviors, which is, as a result of the stresses of the financial situation, patients are skipping medication, taking less medication, delaying care, or maybe not coming in for care that they need. So I'm going to go through first sort of just some general information about costs of medical care in general in the United States. And although it's not specifically this part focused on advanced breast cancer, I want you to think of this as really the tip of the iceberg, because we know that for we know the cancer is one of the most expensive conditions to treat. And for advanced cancer patients, they're on treatment really indefinitely. And so, as sobering as these numbers are, probably it's, again, only the tip of the iceberg for what our patients are experiencing. So this was a survey back in 2012, so a decade ago now, but described that about a quarter of families in the United States were experiencing financial burden of medical care. Among those, like 21% had bills that were being paid over time, like my patient did, and about 16% were not able to pay their medical bills over the last year. The situation can also be pretty significant for affording prescription drugs. The cost of prescription drugs has been soaring over time. And 24% of people overall said it was difficult to cover the cost of their prescription medication. Probably, as you'd expect, this was a biggest issue for people that were taking more than 4 or more medications, if their medicines cost more than $100 a month, if they were in poor health, and if they had lower incomes. We also see, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but really a disproportionate impact on working age population, where they may also be suffering from loss of employment as well as the cost of the care, the direct cost of care. This has really changed how a lot of Americans are viewing healthcare coverage now. So it's shifted from back in 2003, when people were picking health plans, they were primarily discussing and thinking about coverage, like what kind of coverage they had. And now the majority of patients are actually more concerned about costs, like what their coinsurance will be, what their copay is, what their deductible is. Most recently, so just in 2022, the Kaiser Family Foundation did a broad survey of over 2,000 US adults looking at the issue of healthcare debt. So what this reported was that 40%, so 4 in 10 adults, report having medical or dental debt. 1 in 5 people, so 20% of Americans, say they don't expect to ever pay it off. 1 in 7 said they've been denied access to a hospital or a doctor because of unpaid bills. 20% have payment plans that they're trying to pay off their medical bills. And 10% owe money to a family or friend to help them out to cover their bills. So this numbers are really staggering for the number of people impacted. And who does have healthcare debt? Again, it's it's everybody. It's a lot of people, but there is a higher proportion of patients that are younger and kind of working age adults, and minorities are also disproportionately affected. The healthcare debt isn't just a financial matter for the household budget, because even beyond that, it's impacting many aspects of people's lives. So of the people that had medical debt, 63% said they were cutting back on food, clothing, or basic household items. Half of people had used up all their savings. 40% had taken an extra job or work. 37% were not paying other bills so that they could pay their medical bills. A third had taken money out of retirement accounts. People were delaying buying a home, not able to pay for their kids to go to college, and some had even changed their living situations. It also can impact healthcare. So among people with the healthcare debt, 62% reported relying on home remedies or over-the-counter drugs instead of going to the doctor. 64% put off or postponed healthcare that they needed. Half did not get a medical test that was recommended by a doctor because of the cost. And then people are not filling prescriptions, cutting back on taking the prescriptions, and generally delaying care. So patients with cancer, I think, have this even in a more profound way because of the expense of treating cancer. So with advances in diagnosis and treatment, we've really seen an increase in cost sharing and insurance plans and a pretty steep rise in drug costs, both oral and prescription drugs. Between 50 and 75% of survivors report financial hardship. And this has been associated with worse quality of life, with bankruptcy, with treatment non-adherence, and with symptom burden. So these are some questions, again, focused on patients with cancer. So when asked how much of a burden on your family are the costs of your overall medical care, including those needed to cope with cancer, almost half of people said it was a minor or major burden on their families. This asks about the financial burden by insurance status, by income, and by age. And as you'd expect, it was more often a major burden in people who had ever been uninsured, so had periods when they lacked health insurance. But even among people with health insurance, the cost can still be a huge major issue. Again, younger and with lower household incomes were also affected more. So what are the consequences of this? And this is similar to what I showed you before for overall medical debt, but this is again focused specifically on people with cancer. They found that 25% of people had used up all of their savings. 13% had borrowed money from relatives. 13% were being contacted by collection agencies. 7% borrowed money or got another mortgage, and 3% ended up bankrupt as a result of their cancer care, which is just really quite tragic. And people are using the cost-based information to make treatment decisions. So, they reported that 27% of people who didn't have insurance at some point reported that they either didn't get care or delayed care because of the cost, and 13% that they picked their treatment, one treatment over the other, solely based on cost. This study was a really nice one by Robin Yabroff. And so she looked at financial hardship in adult cancer survivors. So, people with a history of cancer. And she looked at the top bar is patients that were 65 years and older. And the bottom bar is patients who were 18 to 64. And she looked at material hardship and then psychological hardship. So the yellow or gold bars are psychological distress, the gray bars are material financial hardship, and the red is both material and psychological hardship. And you see that in patients age 65 and older, a little over than 20% reported hardship. And the younger patients, 18 to 64, it's 40% of people were describing and reporting financial hardship. And I think, we think that at least some of the reason this is true for the younger patients is, again, because of employment. So just to share a personal story. So my younger brother died of cancer about 3 years ago. And when he was sick, it was enormously stressful because everything played in together. So he was really too sick to be working full time. The volume of visits to the hospital and the doctor were really kind of far more than I ever imagined, because there's the doctor visit, but there's also the treatment visits, and there's the lab visits, and there's physical therapy visits, and there's supportive care visits. And he would have weeks where he was at the hospital every single day. And because he was ill, his wife had to accompany him. So she had to come with him. So she couldn't work during that time. Somebody else had to watch their children. So you can really see how it just kind of explodes beyond just the individual patient into the whole family. And with the potential of losing health insurance if people lose employment for their illness. So the young kind of working age, nobody's exempt from this issue, but they are particularly hard hit. This was a study by Scott Ramsey, who's an economist in the University of Washington. And so he had a really interesting work where he linked some of their registry data with bankruptcy records and showed that cancer survivors are more than twice as likely to file for bankruptcy than people without cancer. And if you see at the bottom, I kind of selected out the breast cancer patients, and they're depending on the age groups, like for the youngest, they're almost 14 times more likely to file for bankruptcy. And then he did a follow-up study looking at this and found that it wasn't just, the financial issues of bankruptcy, but the patients who filed for bankruptcy actually had worse breast cancer survival. So the breast cancer patients had a 50% higher mortality rate if they declared bankruptcy. So again, you just see these really devastating financial impacts of cancer on patients and their families. This was a study that looked again at the younger age group population and compared financial toxicity in very young adults, like 18 to 39, other working age adults, 40 to 64, and older adults, those that were 65 and older. And the study found that half of the young adults had severe overall financial toxicity versus 40% in other working age and only about 10% of older adults. They did significantly worse in many different aspects of financial toxicity. So worse material hardship, worse with coping, resource depletion, and psychological burden compared to older adults. And then kind of switching to breast cancer specifically, there's probably less data focused just on breast cancer patients, but it really shows the same issues. So this was a study by my colleague, Tina Shi, who's also in our Department of Health Services Research. She's a healthcare economist. And so she looked at from 2009 to 2016 at medical claims from this database called the Healthcare Cost Institute, and looked at people who were under 65 who had health insurance. And what she found was that over the years that she studied, first of all, the cost of care per patient went up substantially. So from about a little over 100,000 to 140,000. So in general, costs are going up. And she also found that out-of-pocket costs were going up. So they had gone up about 15% over that time period. So, not only are the medicines getting more expensive, but the costs that are being borne by patients have gone up. This study looked at breast cancer surgical decisions, and I was kind of surprised at this result. It found that 28% of patients reported that the costs of treatment influenced the surgical decisions that they had. For households that had lower incomes, cost was prioritized over breast preservation or appearance. And even at the highest incomes, 65% reported they were financially unprepared and had much higher costs than they were anticipating as a result of their treatment. A third reported financial burden as a result of the treatment. And, I think I haven't brought this up yet, but I think it is a big issue. 78% never brought up the costs with their cancer team, so never discussed this with their doctors. Reshma Jagsi, who's a radiation oncologist at University of Michigan, has done a survey also of breast cancer patients and found that the out-of-pocket expense for their early cancer treatment was about just under $2,000, but that 17% ended up spending more than $5,000 on their cancer care. Almost 20% had at least one privation, something they had to do without, and able to afford their cancer care. 12% were left with debt, and only about a half went back to work after diagnosis. She also studied really the unmet need for engagement with a physician. So asked people about, who were experiencing financial toxicity, whether they had unmet needs by their doctors. And 70% said they received really little or no help from physicians or staff in dealing with financial impact. And so I think this really brings up the need for a better training of clinicians for what we can do, like how to assess the situation and how to communicate about the financial impact of treatment, because this is not something that any of us were taught in medical school. Some national organizations are, working towards promoting high value care. So for one example of this would be NCCN, which is a group that does national guidelines for cancer care. And so what they've added on to their guidelines is you have the treatment recommendations, but they also have these little evidence blocks where they try to rank the efficacy of the regimen, the safety, how strong the evidence is, the consistency, and how affordable it is. So, so the idea would be able to look at this and get a sense of the relative effectiveness versus cost of different regimens that are options for patients. So is there anything we can do about it? It's all kind of depressing to go through the numbers and the statistics. And, I think there is. I don't know that there's an easy solution that completely fixes this problems, but I think there are, a lot of different ways that are being evaluated to try to mitigate the situation. So I think that at the highest level, certainly healthcare policy decisions and changes can help patients have less financial burden from care. There's been a push towards more price transparency for hospitals to actually publish what their costs will be. So patients will know what they're getting into. I don't know that this is worked as well as many hoped it would, and really having that data accessible for patients. Certainly there's more awareness and recognition of trying to promote care that's what we consider high value. And there's a possibility under discussion continually of Medicare negotiating drug prices to try to bring our pricing down a little bit so the costs aren't quite so high. I think from the provider level, we probably need more education about cost. We need, first just access to information. So as a breast cancer doctor, I don't even, it's hard for me to know what a given cost for a given drug is for a particular patient. There's not an easy way for me to look that up. So having some way that the clinicians know what's happening with cost and are comfortable communicating it, asking patients if they're having difficulty affording their medicine, so people just aren't not taking it, but too embarrassed to say that. And then there's quite a bit of work going on looking at financial navigation. Patients may be eligible for a lot more benefits and help than they're aware of. So having financial navigators who can help connect the patient to resources that may be out there for them that they're not available of. Not aware of, sorry. And even some things like telemedicine, I can imagine having an impact. So for people not having to take as much time off from work, not having to pay for parking, not having travel costs. Obviously, that can't replace entirely face-to-face visits, but there are situations where that can be used and make it simpler for patients. You don't have to get daycare, for example. And really kind of other ways to minimize time away from work and other costs such as transportation and parking that come with the cancer care that are sort of the outside costs of that. So I'll stop now, and I think we're going to open it up for Q&A. I would love to hear people's thoughts. I think that, again, kind of overall takeaway, we've seen that treatment costs have really escalated in the past 5 years. This is impacting people's choices of treatment. And we just need more financial transparency and more comfort in discussing these issues so that people know what they're getting into and aren't left with major burdens for their families. So I would love to hear what other people think and open questions and see if people have suggestions or ideas for what we can do about this problem, or just sharing their own experiences.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giordano. I think the way that you have set this up, so many of us patients, people living with MBC talk about this, and to just see this research validating so much of what we've experienced is extremely valuable. I have a question, and if you are on the call and you want to ask a question, please post your question in the question and answer chat so that we can sort of make certain that people get their questions answered. I have a question for you. One of the things that I have a concern about because of some personal experience is how the health insurance industry impacts decisions around treatment. And for example, I had some progression and we wanted to do a very targeted radiation, and my insurance provider would not approve that for breast cancer, although they had approved it for other kinds of cancer. They would not approve it for breast cancer. So instead of having 3 very targeted radiation treatments, I ended up having to have 10 radiation treatments. Totally doesn't make sense to me. It seems like 10 treatments would cost more, but so it definitely has an impact on the treatment we're getting. Are people looking at that, and what comments do you have about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue. I think probably some of it from the insurance company perspective is, if I give it the benefit of the doubt, I could imagine it's well intended to try to make sure that people are getting care that's standard treatment and not, not spending money and treatments on things that aren't proven. Having said that, I mean, some of the discussions we get into are just ridiculous, of things that are denied, and there's just more and more, I think, time that's spent by the clinical teams calling to get approvals for things that are really standard. Like one of my colleagues was so frustrated because he was going to treat a patient with Taxol FAC or Taxol AC, I don't know what it was exactly, and the guideline had it listed as AC Taxol, so exactly the same treatment, but just a different sequence. And the insurance is like, oh, no, we can't pay for that. And it just made no sense. Clinically, it made no sense whatsoever because it was the same. So you do get into these kind of crazy discussions of insurance denying things that really are appropriate and should be the right decision for that patient. So that is a challenging situation for how to deal with that. And ultimately, we can appeal, we can send pictures of the guidelines, and if there's anywhere that's a guideline, like usually you can get that approved, but not always. And sometimes it's just a battle that you can fight with the insurance companies and don't win, which is very, very frustrating.
And the last thing I want my radiation oncologist to have to spend her time is fighting the insurance company, which she did.
I'm sure she did. Yeah, I mean,
really tried, but anyway, it's again, as I said before, it's a part of the system that's broken in terms of care for folks who have.
No, I mean, I think you're right. We all will. I mean, I'm sure there's other things that are more fun to do, but we all want the right thing for our patients, and if that's what it takes, everyone, of course, is going to do that. But it's yeah, some of these things you think should be more automatic than they are.
Right. We have another question I'm going to read. How do we lessen the impact on working class patients who have to decide, do they pay the $150 copay for a follow-up scan, or do I pay my utilities and buy groceries?
That's a horrible situation. I think that's where probably a financial navigator comes in. I don't think they can make money appear, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of programs and resources out to help support patients and to support patients with cancer in particular. So kind of being able to connect to social work or somebody with expertise in that area may be able to help patients find a way to afford both, or to have some of their costs lifted. Or to get help with whatever. Maybe there's programs that can help them with some of the utilities while they're on cancer treatment, or maybe the hospital can waive some of the fees. But it's a real challenge. I mean,
and part of this question also is, and I'm sure that Molly Guthrie, who's going to talk with us toward the end about oral parity issues, but it's a real issue for us to understand copays versus deductible versus what insurance will pay in the hospital, and will pay, like Medicare will pay for infusion, and the copay is significantly less than if I'm taking an oral med and having to make a decision to maybe not take the drug that's going to be most effective for me in terms of an oral drug, and reduces my travel time, all of those great things, yet it's going to cost me more because it's not administered in the hospital.
Yeah, it's super frustrating. And even, I mean, as a clinician, it's so frustrating to not know, like, it's not that I want to pick treatment based on cost, but I want people to know what they're getting into. I don't want to, it doesn't make any sense if I give somebody a medicine that's going to end up costing them $10,000 a month and they don't have $10,000 a month. That doesn't work, right? And so, but you just like, you might have, a new expensive drug. It's a great drug, but somebody might have zero copay and get it essentially for free from their plan. And other people might come back up to clinic and say like, this is going to cost me thousands of dollars a month and I just can't do it, are there other options? And I mean, probably there's other people that go home and don't tell me, but I think I think it's terrible that patients get stuck with costs like that, but also then trying to navigate that so that you can help people is really hard when you don't know.
Right. And I think that there's a real issue also in our providers not even knowing what all of these costs are. So, it's hard enough for patients to navigate that, but, I don't think none of my providers have ever talked to me about what this treatment might cost versus another. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting them to know all of this, but somewhere along the line in the institutions, maybe it might be helpful if the institutions incorporated into the initial team discussion, the social worker. So at the hospital, who could say at the very beginning, here are the things you might expect. Because I know so many people who are in treatment and don't even know that there is a social worker at their institution that they could talk to. So I think there's a real opportunity there for us to communicate with the institutions about the need for incorporating that early on. We have another question here too. It's hard for patients when we're above the 300% poverty level, federal poverty level, but still struggling to pay for care and long-term treatment. Many programs don't have a hand up for those who are still trying to work and those who are needing expensive treatment.
Yeah, it's a great point. Sometimes in the middle, you can get caught the worst if you have enough of an income or enough resources that you kind of don't qualify for many of the programs that are out there, but realistically don't actually have enough money to be able to cover the cost of it as well as living. And I think that I would hope there are, I know there are windows where you can fall out of it, obviously, but, I would, again, hope that we can kind of connect people to the resources that are out there, because I think that they're underutilized, that there are more resources than even I know about or that patients know about. And so, being able to connect with somebody who has the knowledge and might be able to help locate additional programs to help, I think is really important.
So can you talk a little bit more about the impact of this anxiety and stress on outcomes? I know you talked a little bit, but.
Yeah, I think that it obviously can play out in different ways for different people, depending on, the degree of anxiety and the degree of stress. But, it's having a lot of stress and anxiety, not only about the cancer diagnosis itself, but then also about the finances. Clearly impacts patients' quality of life and their mental health. So how they feel, how anxious they are, and sort of how, how much enjoyment they get out of life, like what their quality of life is. So, things that we can do to help people, cope with that stress and anxiety, to be able to get it down as low as we can, I think will ultimately help improve their quality of life and hopefully even potentially their cancer outcomes.
Thank you so much. This is, it's a hard topic.
It is hard.
There aren't a lot of solutions, but we know that we're going to hear some things that could make a difference for Molly. And I'm not quite sure, forgive me to the folks who are running this, I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to introduce Molly or whether, Casey, you're going to introduce Molly. Dr. Chidorna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Some of this data is just so helpful, and to have it put into a package like this will help us all as we move forward to try to make change and make a real difference.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you both for a wonderful discussion, and I know we're just starting to scratch the surface. So with that, I would like to pivot and invite Molly Guthrie to come on and discuss some of the fantastic work that she and her team do at Komen through some of their advocacy efforts, and also to educate us on some next steps that we all can get involved with.
Great, thank you, Casey, and thank you for the data and information that was presented, Dr. George Gordiano. It's always a good reminder of why we do the work that we do on the policy and advocacy side. So as Casey mentioned, I am Molly Guthrie. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy here at Susan G. Komen, and I have the pleasure of leading our work through our Center for Public Policy, which has a direct tie into really everything that was discussed today. I feel like I could easily take the entire hour to talk through some of the policy solutions that are out there and that are needed to address the financial toxicity that so many with breast cancer and with metastatic breast cancer face every day. However, I am going to focus on just a couple for right now and encourage everyone to take action through some links that I'll be sharing, which will allow you to sign up as an advocacy insider. And that will lead to receiving regular updates on action opportunities, both federally and in your local communities. So first off, as Pam mentioned, one issue that we've been engaging on for a very long time, my entire tenure at Komen, so about 13 or 14 years, is the issue of creating parity when it comes to anti-cancer therapies. So traditionally, as many of you are familiar with, those therapies were administered via an IV, and with innovation and amazing research advancements, more and more of those therapies are available in a pill form rather than IV. However, the way that it's covered by insurance is significantly different. One is covered through your medical benefits, and if it's in a pill form, it goes through your pharmaceutical benefits. And as a result, those oral therapies are subjected to cost sharing and co-insurance rather than a flat copay that you might get for going to a infusion center to get your IV. And that has translated into patients being forced to pay hundreds up to thousands of dollars out of pocket in order to access those oral therapies. And so to create a systemic solution, we worked in a broad coalition of all types of cancer organizations, provider groups, to establish state laws that create parity in how the therapies are covered, regardless of if they're administered in an IV or if they're oral. Great success at the state level, but there is still a pending federal solution. So the state bills only hit a small percentage of plans that are regulated by the state governments. And so we need this federal solution and encourage everyone to take action to push this issue back to the forefront with their lawmakers. We'll include a link in the chat for those of you that haven't taken action. All you do is click the link and put in your information, and it will send the communication to the correct elected official, asking them to move this bill. Again, it's been years and years and years, but please go ahead and take action on that. Another area where we've done a lot of work on Komen, and many other breast cancer groups are working on this bill too, is the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. Again, not a solution for all of the financial toxicities that are out there and that were discussed today. But what this bill does is eliminate waiting periods that currently exist in our system for those with metastatic breast cancer to receive Social Security disability insurance and Medicare healthcare benefits. And so currently, between those two programs, individuals are forced to wait a combined 29 months before they have access to either to those programs. And that's just insane, something that should be pretty straightforward to fix. This has been an issue that we've been working on again for a few years, but has pretty significant momentum behind it right now. And there's a big push to hopefully see this bill get across the finish line before the end of this calendar year. Because if it doesn't, then we have to restart the whole process at the start of the next Congress in January of 2023. So we'll provide an action alert on this one too, the same concept that you click the link and it takes you to the page and you're able to connect directly with your senators and your federal members of the House of Representatives, and encourage you all to take action on that one too. It likely has a better chance of seeing movement this Congress than the oral parity bill, but both are important to engage on when it comes to getting to that systemic policy change. And again, there's a long laundry list of other opportunities and needed change. So I encourage you to not be intimidated by engaging on public policy. You know, the way that this change happens is by you all sharing your voices and demanding action from your elected officials who work for you. So please know that you can have an impact and that we need all of the voices that we can to see movement on these important issues. Pam, I saw that you came on video, but you are muted.
Molly, I know that you're somewhat restricted in saying some things, but I'm not, I'm retired. So yeah, I think it would be really helpful also if in the chat or somehow you put the names of the two bills and the number, because people are getting ready. You know, there are elections happening this fall. And one of the most important things you can do right now during that election campaign is to ask the candidates where they stand on these types of bills. And so, yes, it's important to hit the link and get your letter to those that are currently in Congress, but you have an opportunity to have impact on who goes to Congress and whether they support these important bills. So I know you may not be able to say that in terms of electing the right people, but
yes. And another thing, if you take action, you'll get into the list, as I mentioned, and we'll be launching a Get Out the Vote platform in the coming days that will allow some of that, right? We all need to be educated on where our candidates stand on these important issues. And so that's absolutely true, Pam. And one of the most powerful things that we have is our vote. So also important for everyone to make sure that they're engaging in primary elections and general elections every time they come around. So thank you, Pam.
Okay. So with that, as we mentioned, this is a really difficult topic, and there's certainly no easy solution or quick solution that we'll be able to come up with or share in just a single hour. But I did want to take a moment and highlight a few resources that we did put in the chat that might be of help or support as you start navigating that sometimes overwhelming task of even seeking resources out. The first, and I'm going to speak through some of it because I know sometimes people will be watching this on a recording and I want to make sure that they have the same access without the access to the chat links directly. The first is Komen Helpline. And that can be reached through calling 1-877-465-6637 or emailing helpline@komen.org. And that's a big one because even if you don't remember links or Google searches, they can help navigate you to a variety of resources. The next one I want to highlight is the NBC Alliance website. There is a direct link to a search in the chat if you're currently on. If you're not and you need to look this up later, it is nbcalliance.org, and then you can click at the top of their site resources and select financial, and it will generate a list of a wealth of various resources and programs through their own nonprofit organization, as well as several other partner organizations to address a variety of things. You really just have to look through and select what you think you best are suited for and or require. So I wanted to make sure I verbalized those resources. Also in the chat, there is a link if you'd like to get involved with the things Molly was discussing and inviting us to get involved with. And lastly, I'm so excited that you could join us today for this important event. Thank you for staying on and asking your questions. And we want to express our gratitude to our speaker today, Komen Scholar, Dr. Sharon Giordano, and our moderator, Pam Cole. Today's session was recorded and will be posted to our landing page soon. So if you can log in and rewatch the session or view previous sessions you may have missed. Please help us spread the word about this important content with your friends, family, and healthcare professionals you think may be interested. Once again, we want to acknowledge our sponsors of the 2022 MBC Impact Series. Their generous support allows us to continue to bring this community together and share important information, resources, and experiences. A very special thank you to AstraZeneca for being the technology sponsor for this year's series. And we would also like to thank our premier sponsors, Amgen and GE Healthcare. Also, our signature sponsors, Walgreens, Sanofi, and Daiichi Sankyo. This series is made possible because of the generosity of these sponsors. Please also help us by completing a survey, which you can find in the chat feature of the platform. Your feedback is very important